social media is an important part of getting our content out there, so I'm excited to learn some best practices that will make us all more successful. Welcome to the show, Shaina.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. So let's start 101. Why is video so important for social media in the first place?
Well, man, I mean, video came on the scene a while ago now. So now it's almost like everybody knows that video is so important. But for a while there, people were like, do I post pictures? Do I post text? Whatnot? Video is just so dynamic. It is catchy. I mean, you're seeing something move on a screen in front of you. And that I think initially was what started to get the attention of people when they were scrolling in the first place, and why video shared 1,200% more than text and images combined on social. So I mean, we're not just saying it's important, it's statistically important. So, but it's just fun to watch. It's a lot easier to consume at a faster rate.
And then for the social media platforms, their algorithm favors it. Is that true?
Yes. Oh
Okay.
yeah, hugely. Definitely.
Okay. So this is not only visually appealing for us humans, it is algorithmically advantageous for us as well.
That was a great
Algorithmically
advantageous.
Did I just make up that? No, that's probably a word.
And you said it so cleanly. Well played.
Well, I've been practicing at this podcasting thing for a little while, so I'm going to keep at it. Okay, so let's dive into this. So, where do we start with optimizing for video? So we know video is the way to go, and we want to get our stuff seen. So how do we start optimizing our content for social media with video?
Great question. So, it's such a smart question to ask, because so many people just slap their video on Facebook and hope it's going to do all of the awesome, amazing things. But there's so many, yeah, right? All of us, let's be honest.
Right.
We're like, oh, let's just hope this is the one-off time. It's a magical unicorn of a piece of content. But ultimately, like, there are things that you can do that are super, super simple that will make a huge difference, right? The first thing is, like, we repurpose content. We do a lot with like longer form pieces of content and chop it up into smaller pieces. Shorter, like taking small snippets up to 2 minutes. Honestly, though, the stats on that are changing because of the world we're living in and people consuming a lot differently now that everybody's sitting in front of their phones constantly. But generally speaking, it's been about 2 minutes is where the sweet spot lies on video for social. Wistia, which is a video hosting platform, did a test on that, and they found that engagement heavily decreased after about 2 minutes. So about that 2 minute mark is a really great place to keep your content for social. Another smart thing to do is to size your videos properly. It's going to make such a difference. Like, think about as you're scrolling on your feed on your phone, right? If you see a landscape video, which is the wide video, right? As you see it, you see the next post creeping up underneath it. So you're distracted immediately when you're already looking at a piece of content. So for a while there, square video is what performed best, but now they're showing that vertical video performs the best out of all of them. So video that is, the super tall video, it takes up the entire space on the phone. It's basically like you're elbowing everybody else out of the screen. It's the me show,
Yeah,
but that's what it is. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to keep their attention, right? So you don't want to distract them with the post that's coming up. So vertical video on feeds is very important, but then, you want your landscape video on YouTube, and it's just making sure that the size is correct is also helpful. And lastly, like of many things, captions. Captions are such a big part and the biggest pain in the butt part of repurposing content for social, or at least having good social video. 85% of people on Facebook watch video without the sound on. So like, you're only getting 15% of people who are listening to you. So if you are a talking head video scrolling through a platform, then people are going to pass by you because nobody's listening. They're just looking at a head and they have no idea what you're talking about. So they're going to scroll by. And if people are like, oh, it's okay, my audience is on LinkedIn and they're super smart and savvy and they definitely watch videos with the volume on, you're wrong, because 80% of people on LinkedIn are scrolling with the volume off. So captions are so important, and making sure the captions are on the video is what's very important too. Because like Facebook and YouTube, you can upload files and they'll populate and stuff, but LinkedIn and Instagram and those platforms, like, it has to be burned on the video is what we call it, burned on. It's just basically it's there. But you have to have it, or you're going to lose so much of the engagement that you could potentially be getting with it.
Those are such key insights, because and you can think about those statistics, and you just think about yourself, right? You're like, all right, I'm picturing myself scrolling, and I see a video. It's like, oh yeah, there's that person. Okay, I keep going. But like, if you, oh, how can I engage without maybe, you know, flipping on the sound? Like if I'm on Instagram, I'll have to flip that part on my phone or other social platforms. So it makes total sense when you think about these things. And I've noticed recently on Facebook that they have an auto generator for captions. Is that going to be happening across other platforms as well?
You know, who's to say? Instagram's owned by Facebook,
Yeah.
so potentially maybe, but also Facebook has had the feature for a very long time that you could upload SRT files, which are the caption files. But Instagram has never had anything like that. So I don't know that it's something that's on the docket there. Also, keep in mind though, first of all, I am a very fast talking Italian. So the captions that auto populate for when I'm talking are entertaining, but they're
Yes.
not necessarily what I'm saying.
Right.
So while the auto-populated captions are fine, like you're gonna have some error there for sure because it's all AI. I mean, and
Sure.
Facebook's AI is not as good as Google's AI for the auto-populating captions. So there's a couple. You can
We
definitely
might
use that as a
accidentally
workaround,
throw a
but
swear word in there if we didn't mean to. Give somebody
for
some
me, it'd be
direction
the
that we didn't
opposite,
want to
but
give.
yeah, right, exactly. So yeah,
Oh
I mean, there's
man.
something to be said with doing it fast and quick. You know,
Okay.
maybe there's a little bit of error there, but
Well, Shayna, those are some great quick tips for people. Let's talk specifically for the individuals out there that are making specific content. So let's start with bloggers. So I'm a blogger. How do I use video to help drive more traffic to my site?
I love that. So traditionally, blogs have been the one type of content that isn't video. And so you put the link on Facebook or whatever and just hope it does something. And that's the end of that, right? Well, what we've been doing is taking up to 100 words of a blog post, which when it's animated into video is about 90 seconds. So it keeps you in that like 2 minute mark, depending on the animation. But what you do is you find a really cool snippet from the blog article, stats, something like that, and there's a couple of tools, we do it also, but like that you can go into and you type in the words, you add your branding elements, and it creates these really cool in and out animations and like stock video behind music. I mean, it's you can create these goalcast style videos out of blog posts and think about the like for you especially think about the backlog of content that you've got sitting there. You could fill a social media calendar for years just on repurposed assets from that alone. And then what's cool about it is like the goal is to get people off of the platform. Like you want them off of Facebook, but Facebook doesn't want them off of Facebook, right? So what's cool about that is you can get real savvy in your headlines and titling and say like, let's say if you're using numbers in your blog posts, like good for you because numbers really help people like want to close the loop. It's a psychological thing. But if you're saying, hey, one tip of 7 on how to make sure your content gets viewed on Facebook, and it's one tip, and then you're like link to the other tips in the comments, now you're driving them to the full length piece of content where you hopefully have a lead magnet or something else to nurture them with. Like you can take that small snippet, fill up your social profiles, but then drag them back somewhere that actually matters so then you can actually nurture a relationship.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Talk to people why that is a lot better than you just posting your URL in a social media post.
Oh man. Well, think
and
about it
and
this way.
why too. I mean, and the purpose of the Facebooks and the Twitters, you know, not wanting them to leave. I mean, that's the whole point, right?
Right. Oh, the point is if you're on Facebook, Facebook wants you to stay on Facebook. If you're on Twitter, Twitter wants you to stay on Twitter, and like so on the list goes. LinkedIn is the only weird caveat. Like they don't get real weird about links, which is so interesting to me. But I'm sure they're like the 5 year ago Facebook, so they're going to catch up, and that's going to be a big no
That's
no.
great. The 5 year.
They are. I mean, it's not pay to play yet, really. So I mean, we're getting there. But ultimately, all these it makes sense. All these platforms want you to stay on their platform. So if you start putting links to anything other than Facebook, they're not going to show people. They're basically going to shut down your views.
Yeah.
I mean, they won't shut it down completely because, you know, it is what it is, but they're going to severely diminish the amount of eyes that see that piece of content. So what you want to do is post a dynamic piece of content like video or, you know, an image and things like that. But you'll say the link to this content is in the comments. What we also do is take it a step further is we'll do a short link or really easy to remember link and actually embed it on the video on the bottom corner throughout the entire piece of the content. So if they're watching, they're like, wait, I just want to watch the whole thing or read the whole thing. They know there's a bit.ly link that's right there that they can just access. And it's not an actual link, but they can remember it and type it in or make it super quick for themselves. But also it's in the comments. I don't know how long this link in the comments thing is going to survive for,
That's what I
because
was just
Facebook will
thinking.
get
Like they're
savvy.
gonna, yeah, they're gonna come up with some sort of
But
loophole.
it's been a while though.
Yeah.
Like they haven't hit it yet. I don't know if maybe it's just like lower on the things that are important to them at the moment, but
Yeah.
I'm going to use it until it's not available anymore. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Well, talk to me about the difference if, let's say, somebody's been, hey, I've got a big social media presence. I've just been posting my URL and seeing what happens. Talk to them about the difference in site traffic if they were to do something like this video idea versus just posting your URL. You might not have a specific number, but talked about the difference in traffic they might expect to get.
Yeah, I don't have specific numbers
Mhm.
on that. What I do know is that if you're posting the link, just the logic of kind of what we explained is really what I know about it. If you're
Yeah.
posting the link, you're getting less views, less eyeballs, and if you have less views, you're getting less engagement and less click-throughs. So like as that number diminishes, it's just math. Like the less numbers you have, the further down that funnel it goes. So if you have more people who are actually able to view the content and engage in it, and you have a link that's not being kind of guarded by the Facebook dogs, right? You're probably going to see a higher return. But also there are other things you need to do in order to get people to take action and actually click through. Like we're saying, the whole, if you have 7 tips and you're showing one, like using psychology, having headlines that are catchy, like you can post a link and hope it happens. And maybe you do get some hits on it. Obviously you may get some, but making sure that you're playing by the rules of the platforms, if you will, they'll reward you for it too.
Yeah, and even just doing a test, like saying, "Hey,
Yeah,
post your URL one day, and then post something similar, and see what traffic difference you might see, and
for sure.
that could be a big difference." Well, let's
Yeah.
talk to the vloggers out there, the people who are making videos.
Yeah.
So I know when I have I make these dynamic YouTube videos where I'm talking on camera, and it's gonna get a billion views, and then it doesn't. I post the YouTube URL and Facebook, and then it does nothing. It does nothing because of what we've just talked about. So what could I do instead of doing that would help me get more viewers towards my video?
Yeah, so YouTube is tricky. Like my question is, when they get to YouTube, what are you asking them to do? YouTube is distracting also. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of YouTube. Like be there, because what you want to do, YouTube is where people are searching for content, because YouTube is owned by Google as well. So if somebody searches for something, you want to show up with your content. But if you're going to drive people there, for me, it's like there's so much happening on a YouTube page. You have all these suggested videos, and then you got the ads and the this and the that. Like there's so much stuff, it's overwhelming. So for me, like if you're going to drive somebody to a piece of content, send them to a landing page with that piece of content, send them somewhere intentional. But also, we're talking about the fact that Facebook doesn't want you to link out to other places. What you can also do is host your long form videos in like playlists on your Facebook page as well. So you can drive them to the full length piece of content and give them call to action there. Facebook's going to like that you're sending them to Facebook, so that link is going to work fine there. But there's just other ways to manage it. I'm not a big proponent of sending somebody from a platform where they're already distracted, like Facebook, to YouTube, another distracting platform. Like if you're going to put energy into sending somebody somewhere and they're going to take action on it, send them somewhere where it's very focused and very clean. And there's one thing that you want them to do, and that's either watch the content or take action on something on that page.
Yeah, that's a good point, and this all depends on like what's the end, right? What is our end
Right,
goal, right? Do
exactly.
we want more views? Do we want somebody to go to our webinar? Do we want somebody to buy our product? And if you think about the end goal, that's probably where we should start, right?
Absolutely. Well, yeah, you have to work backwards. Like ultimately, if your income comes from ads on YouTube and you need impressions, like that's a different story than you're having somebody sign up for a webinar that then puts them into your funnel. Like it's a completely different beast. You just have to work backwards from where you're starting.
Yeah.
Or from where you end, I guess.
Well, let's keep going with this vlogger side of things. I know that as a YouTuber, we create these videos and then we want to get as many eyeballs on it as possible, right? So do we need to reformat for IGTV if we want to get Instagram views, or should we just repurpose the same video?
Yeah, so IGTV works best vertically. And also you're going to want those captions burned on it, because let's remember, nobody's watching with the volume on. So absolutely reformatting it for the platform is going to be huge. Also, same thing with like the headlines. Like you're still going to want it to be catchy. You're still going to want it to get the attention. all the best practices apply on all the platforms. So making sure it's shaped right, captioned, and you got a cool headline on it, and the piece of content can still remain, but you still have some work to do before it works on that on IGTV.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, there's podcasters listening to this podcast right now, and they're saying, okay, well, how can I use video on social media to get more downloads for my podcast? What's some suggestions you have for them?
Yeah, the great audiogram is really it, and that's kind of where it started with those guys. So like ultimately an audiogram, for those of you who don't know, is just a piece of audio that has been turned into like a moving graphic. So sometimes you'll see it like a waveform jumping around as somebody's talking. And that's pretty much it. But what that means is now this audio piece has turned into video. And then the same rules apply, right? The right shape, brand it to your colors. There's cool apps like Headliner and stuff like that that you can do it yourself. There's tools like us that do it for you, but like it's ultimately it's all the same stuff. It's just you're taking a different type of content, doing all the same fun formatting stuff, and then posting it. And then the call to action, similarly to what we were just talking about, like listen to the full episode here, or like IGTV is cool because you can put the Spotify link in the IGTV video. There's all different ways that you can send people to that content.
Got it. Yeah. If we use some of these best practices, use video for social because we know it's showing up in the algorithm, at least we'll get seen and then considered, and then obviously play some little tricks to bring people back to the website or wherever we want them to go. Okay, right. So there's lots of people who are listening right now and maybe thinking, okay, I've been doing it one way and this is another way. What are some mistakes? Like what are the people doing right now that they shouldn't be doing and maybe spending money and time on, and it's a little bit of a waste? Like tell us.
Yeah. So one thing, there's a lot, but one thing for sure that I see a lot of is everybody posts their assets. Like let's say you're making awesome repurposed assets. You've got it all formatted right and it looks clean and great, but they're posting everything at the same time on the same day across all the platforms. Like Tuesday at 10 a.m. is when they scheduled it in Buffer or whatever, right? And now it's going to all go live at the same time. The problem with that is what if people in your audience, like we're not on social media at 10 a.m. on Tuesday, right? Or whatever. And also the lifespan of a post is very, very short. Like on Twitter, it's 18 minutes. It's crazy. Like Facebook is 5 hours. So ultimately you're banking on all of these people being available on that day at that time to see your content. You have to stagger your posts across all the different platforms that your audiences are on. And the reason for that is because impressions matter. Like we were just talking about with YouTube, like you want to make sure that you're popping up consistently. So if they see your content Tuesday at 10 on Facebook, but then they see the same piece of content with just tweaked copy maybe on LinkedIn on Thursday, they may also be in a different frame of mind at that point. So they may be more or less receptive to that piece of content based on what happened in their day or even what platform. Like I am in a different headspace on Instagram than I am on LinkedIn for sure. So a different piece of content would matter more or less to me depending on, what platform I'm on. So making sure that you're hitting them in all the different places that you can across the course of a week is going to be really important with the same piece of content.
Yeah, and it's also different conversations on different platforms too. Your Shaina's different on LinkedIn than she is on Instagram potentially, right? I mean, you're still doing what you're doing, but the tone is maybe a little different, right?
There's less dog pictures on LinkedIn, I would say.
That's right.
So maybe, yeah.
And if they do show up, they're getting whacked in the algorithm, probably, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. They're not as receptive, but hey.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we're talking about all these platforms: LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Is there something to just focusing on one platform, or do we need to be on all these platforms?
Yeah, and that's the age-old question. My biggest piece of advice is like, know where your audience is. Your audience isn't going to be on all platforms. And also extending yourself too thin too early is just going to be a recipe for disaster. You're going to be chasing these platforms consistently and not doing any of them really well. So focus on one or two that your audience is on and engage in them very, very well. And don't just post your content and then hope the stuff happens. Actually engage on those platforms. Like on LinkedIn heavily, heavily rewards people who are engaging on other people's content. Like if you are only commenting on your own post and responding to comments on your post, LinkedIn's like, okay, cool, great. Like you get engagement. But if you now start doing that and engaging on other people's content, LinkedIn will reward you with more views on all of your stuff. So making sure you're just really, really good at a couple of platforms that matter. And then once you nail those down, you have your processes really clean and savvy, then you can start maybe toying with additional ones. Because ultimately, you don't want to waste your time and your energies on a platform that you're going to do halfway and that your audience maybe isn't on in the first place.
Yeah. So we are in the personal finance niche on this show, right? And since there are so many platforms, are there any that are maybe a waste of time or that have become obsolete? Like people talk about Twitter coming in and out of this world that they're in. Are any of them a waste of time? Is Twitter a waste of time? Like, where do we need to be?
It really just depends. It's really what you feel like your audience is responding to. I can't say any platform's a waste of time because people have success on all of them, in all different fields. Like I can guarantee you that there are like people in finance who are seeing some sort of success on TikTok, and that doesn't make sense to my brain, but I can guarantee you it's happening. So I don't want to be the person to say don't be here because it just is a waste of time. But ultimately, like I would say the platforms that you feel fluent in, that's a good choice. Like the LinkedIn's are fluent to me. Like Facebook is fluent to me because I'm aging myself and I'm like late 30s, so it's weird. But like TikTok to me is not a language I speak, but it's a part of the culture that we're in right now. So it's like, but I also know my audience specifically more heavily lives on, those two platforms, and I can target them and really nurture them a lot better than I would on those other platforms. But like we were talking about Twitter, the lifespan is very short there. So you have to think about the content, like how quickly are you able to create content? How often are you going to be on the platform? If you want to engage on Twitter, you got to be on it a lot because you got 18 minutes for every post. So, just looking at the platforms and saying how much bandwidth am I going to get out of everything I post is probably going to be a smart way to assess it too.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, do you have any best practices for managing your day as somebody who spends a lot of time on social media and having it not just like take up all of your time?
Yes, yeah. Oh my gosh. And that's a trial and error thing for everybody, I feel like. Cause I go through months where it's like super heavy and then some months where I'm like, you know what, like I'm just gonna let the auto stuff happen and I'll engage when I feel like it's really there. But ultimately like making sure you have dedicated time that is intentional, not just scrolling to scroll. That's going to be a huge like you're going to see success more so by using less time that's just very, very pointed. Because if you're just scrolling to scroll, you're wasting your own time and you could probably doing something a lot more beneficial for your business. But like actually setting aside like an hour and saying, okay, Facebook's first, LinkedIn second. If those are the only two platforms you're on, great. But that's the time you use to engage. What I would do is invest time and it's not expensive and a little bit of money in a scheduling platform like a Buffer, Agorapulse, something like that, so that you can take like maybe Monday's your social media day and you can take all the content and schedule it out for the entire week and know that, okay, the posts are fine. Now I just have to engage. Like you can actually schedule IGTV videos. We schedule stories. Like you can do lots of different things and not let social media like take over your life every single day.
Right. I think that's a good point because I mean we can spend so much time growing our following or growing our social media platform, but at the end of the day, we're not maybe making any money in our business. But we got a lot of followers, but we're not making any money. Like,
Right.
is that a loop you find people in?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually have one client who said it, and he actually stole it from a client, so it's like a double steal. But he's like, you can't deposit likes.
Right. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's the truth. Like you can't, okay, cool. I have a lot of likes on this video, but what's the end goal? Like what
Mhm.
is that? And like we said, work backwards from there. And if your content on social is not driving people to that end goal, then you need to reevaluate your social media strategy for sure.
Sure, yeah. And I think I fall into that loop a lot where I'm like, hey, I've reached 1,000 followers on Facebook, and then I give myself a little pat on the back, but then at the end I'm like, well, what does that mean? What does that mean to have a follower? Unless I'm converting or figuring out a way that I can help those folks or whatever my final goal is for what I'm trying to do. I think that's a good call to action for a lot of us, especially me as I'm saying it, as it's coming out of my mouth right now. All right, so somebody's listening right now and they are ready to get serious with video on social media. What should be their first step following this interview?
Well, if they haven't created video, what I would do is say start outlining the questions you get asked the most in your profession. Like what are the questions you answer every day all day to people constantly, right? Take those questions and break them down into answers that have 7 points or number. Like, okay, the top 7 things you want to know about XYZ. Have like 5 or 6 of those and then just start filming them. And then like that's your pillar piece of content. That's your long form, right? But now if you have a number 7, you've got 7 individual pieces of repurposed content that then can drive to the long form piece of content. If you start from the bottom level in content creation, smart, knowing how you're going to utilize it to its fullest, you're going to spend a lot less time on it. So I would just spreading your list. I mean, I'll be driving and I'll think of something that or I'll have a conversation with somebody, think of a topic that I think would be interesting as a piece of content. And it's like, hey Siri, make a note of whatever. Just have a running list of topics because you're not going to want to stop and film them right then and there, but you also don't want to forget. So just, get ready to film one day. Take your phone, get in front of a window, film something, change your shirt, film another one, change your shirt, film another one. Just make it like a part of your month that you just film 4 of these things, 5 of them, and that's your content for the rest of the month.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point too earlier of scheduling that time to do it. So if you're going to say, "Hey, Monday's my day for whatever, making content, creating the snippets or smaller repurposed content," that is a good thing to do just because you're scheduling it out and you're making it happen. So talk about how Repurpose House supports with this process. I know you guys are heavy into it, and that could be a good resource for people. So talk to us about it.
Yeah, definitely. So we take all of that content, text, video, audio, and we do all of the fun stuff we just talked about. So we create really cool templates based on your branding, your audience, and we reshape everything. We trim the audio, we put the captions on it, we actually schedule the social media platforms. We can do as much or as little as you really want us to do. But if you have like old blog posts or podcast episodes, we have curators who will go through those pieces of content, find the best pieces, like make the captions for it, make the headlines, all the way up into posting them onto your platforms for you. So we can go as little as like you tell us what you want repurposed and we send it back to you in a pretty little Google Drive folder, or we can go as far as finding the content and all the way up to posting it for you.
Cool. So like the minimum program that you guys work with just to get people off the ground, what does that something like that cost?
Yeah, so if you just want to say, here's my little snippet of video, I just want it sized right with captions, it starts at like 179. But then it goes all the way up into full service, like
Per
we
month.
actually go through all of your stuff and post it. Yes, yeah, per month.
179 per month. Yeah, I mean, for people out there who are like, man, I need some time in my day, and I would be happy to, part with $200 to help with getting that out there, and I have no time, I can schedule it and things like that. That seems like a really great value. So talked about where people can connect with you if they want to learn a little bit more and get a quote.
Yeah, absolutely. So repurposehouse.com is really the place to do it. Not only is that like where you're going to learn about the service, but we have so many awesome educational resources there too. So if you're curious about anything that like we already talked about here, I can guarantee you there's like 5 articles to support it and give you more insight on it on the Repurpose House site. We actually have courses also. So if you're not in a place where you can pay to have somebody else do this for you, we have courses teaching you how to do all of this from A to Z yourself. There's just a lot of cool resources there for you to be able to embark on. So yeah, repurposehouse.com. On all the social channels, we're Repurpose House Co. Somebody took Repurpose House, so we had to add the co at the end. And then I'm Shaina Weisinger on all the channels. Like I said, on Instagram, you're going to see dogs. So LinkedIn, you're probably going to get more relevant content. So that's where we're at there.
They'll probably be video dogs, though, right? At least.
Of course, because we all know that's what's important.
That's right. Shaina, thank you so much for your time today. This was great.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thank you for having me.